Welcome friends, in this video let's discuss about 17th conference of parties to UNFCCC, that is Durban Summit, and 20th conference, that is LIMA Summit. First, Durban Summit. It was organized on 2011 at Durban, South Africa. Here, the Kyoto Protocol, which puts the legally binding limit on the developed countries to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, the first commitment period started from 2008 to 2012. So before 2012, the next commitment period must have started. So there must be an agreement between the developed and developing countries for the second commitment period. For that, various actions by the member countries, including the Bali Action Plan, Copenhagen Summit, Cancun Summit, was made. So there was no deal. There was no common ground reached between developed and developing countries in this respect related to second commitment period of the Kyoto Protocol. And this itself continued in this conference as well. So there was no treaty was established under the Durban Summit as well related to the second commitment period of Kyoto Protocol, but the conference agreed to establish a second legal binding deal. Okay, conference agreed to establish a legally binding deal comprising all countries by 2015, okay, and which was to take effect by 2020. Okay, the countries agreed to establish this. So the India's position at the conference was that the principle of equity, that is the common but differentiated responsibility, must be respected, and this must be the future course of negotiation for all the coming climate deals. And the new global deal must be launched only after 2020. This was the stand of the India at the Durban Summit. Let's look at the important outcomes of the deal. So here, the new deal to be finalized by 2015 about the next legally binding commitment by the countries to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and that deal must be launched by 2020. And the second phase of Kyoto Protocol is secured, that is the second phase started from 2012 and ending 2020. So this deal will continue after 2020. And the Green Climate Fund was launched. It was established at Cancun Agreement, and the equity finds place back in the future climate talks. So the common but differentiated responsibility is remain intact in this as well, and the future course of negotiations, and adaptation mechanism and transparency mechanism was also established in this conference. So let's look at the next conference of parties, that is the 20th conference of parties held at Lima, Peru, from December 1st to 12, 2014. So this is the latest conference of parties. Various important agreements were reached here. Here the countries agreed to limit the global warming within the limits of 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Okay, and because the fifth assessment report of the IPCC given that if there is an as usual approach, so if there is no understanding between the developed and developing countries to reduce the global greenhouse gas emissions, then the global warming will reach 4.8 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial level by 2100. So this creates devastating effects throughout the world, and various events like melting of glaciers, global warming, reduction in food production. So this will be resulted if there is as usual approach. So countries must negotiate themselves to reduce the global warming, to limit the global warming within 2 degrees Celsius. So at present, the countries are emitting 50 gigatons of carbon dioxide and equivalent gases into the atmosphere. So to maintain the level of 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial level, it has to be reduced to 41 gigatons. Okay, so with this background, this Lima Summit was organized, and the common but differentiated responsibility is also respected in this conference. Okay, why I am telling this is that the developed countries all along the negotiations lobbying to remove this common but differentiated responsibility principle, because it creates discrimination between developed and developing countries in taking responsibility to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So here, but even though with the lobby of the developed countries, this CBDR is respected in this summit also, and the targets were put in this conference. By March 2015, the negotiating text for Paris Agreement that is by October 2015 Paris Agreement would have been there to be finalized, but it was a failure. And by October 2015, intended nationally determined contributions, that is INDC, should be provided by the individual countries to the conference. So what is this intended nationally determined contributions? So here the countries have been asked to publicly declare what action they intend to take under a new global agreement that is going to started from 2020. So individual countries must provide their intended nationally determined contribution. So how they are going to reduce the global greenhouse gas emissions. So on what level? So these are left to the individual countries themselves to decide. So various countries have provided their INDC, that is intended nationally determined contribution. For example, the country like Andorra provided that it will reduce the 37% of the global greenhouse gas emissions below pre-industrial level by 2030. Okay, and Canada provided the INDC as follows: it will reduce 30% below 2005 level by 2030. And China, on the other side, decided to reduce 60 to 65% of the carbon dioxide in relation to the per unit of the GDP. Okay, not the absolute greenhouse gas emission here. It is related to the per unit of GDP. Okay, based on 2005 level by 2030. So these are all the intended nationally determined contribution of the individual countries. Not all the countries have given this. Only 30-35 countries have given this INDC to the conference. So this is the negotiations in the LIMA Summit. So there are a lot of criticisms for the LIMA Summit going on throughout the world, because there was no enforcement mechanism for the intended nationally determined contributions, because these are very vague, very ambiguous, and there was no timeline for this, and these were not non-binding. Okay, no evaluations were taken for the pledges given by the countries. So this is one of the aspect. And the funding for the Green Climate Fund, that is $100 billion to be raised by 2020 to fund the global warming projects throughout the world. And for this, there was no roadmap was made, and it is unlikely to achieve, because only $10 billion was pledged by the developed countries in this conference. Okay, and 2020 is fast approaching, so it is unlikely to achieve. And document text drafted was not finalized for the negotiation by 2050. So the focus here will be more on adaptation than mitigation here. Adaptation is the climate change than reducing the climate change itself. So this is a backward step. And the media in the developed countries is engaging in a smear campaign on India and China, because India and China stick to the common but differentiated responsibility. But the media, the public media in the developed countries, have portrayed this as an obstacle for the negotiations because of the rigid attitude of India and China to sticking to common but differentiated responsibility. And they are showing this CBDR principle as redistribution of resources and wealth from developed countries to the developing countries, because this is discriminatory for the developed countries. So these are the things happened at LIMA Summit. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Thanks.